Hello, Gary.
Hello, Guy. How are you?
I'm very well. I mean, I'm basking in the sun. So I'm on holiday, doing broken my holiday course for the
I,
Rockonteurs.
I know. We thought we'd have a little bit of a special. Actually, just before then, I want to say congratulations to your son, Stan Pratt, because he's got a single out. And I know I'm promoting the family here, but I'm not, I'm not making money out of this, am I? It's a great track. He's got an amazing voice.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah,
Yes.
he's got a big 80s electro vibe. Electro pop vibe, and it's really funny because that's not what I listened to around the house when he was growing up, I'll tell you.
Yeah, it would be quadrophilia, I would have thought. But he is
He
obviously
hates the Who.
taking after his old man.
Oh, thank you.
No, we're sort of on holiday now. I know we had a break last week. That was actually because I have to say we had a guest let us down for the third time, and it's very.
A guest who I'm sorry, I hate to say, but who is everywhere now at the moment, talking to
Yeah.
everyone, it seems. So we're a little bit miffed.
We were waiting. We were left at the lurch, weren't we?
We were left at the altar.
Left at the altar, and left in the lurch at the altar. That's it. You're not left in a lurch, are you? There is no such thing as a lurch.
Yes, there is. He was in the Addams family, wasn't he?
But three great musicians have passed away in the last maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah, because there's been a gap. Yeah,
and we thought we would jump on and do this ep, even though Guy's on holiday. And but it started with Sly Stone, and then Brian Wilson went, and I felt sorry for Sly Stone because suddenly he's not getting any more publicity over his death because he's been sort of usurped by Brian Wilson.
Yeah, well, it's the Aldous Huxley routine, isn't it? It's brilliant. It's a great opening line of it. I can't remember which Sheryl Crow song it was, which he was born the day that Aldous Huxley died. Because of course, no one remembers the day that Aldous Huxley died because it was November the 22nd, 1963. It was the day that Kennedy was shot.
Yes. So, that would be a bummer. You know that Errol Flynn died on the day I was born, and I often feel that there might be
I wonder
sort of
because no one ever talked about his death, did they? It's like something else was happening that day.
Exactly.
But anyway, yes, but also can we say, with all the stories about Sly, which were pretty much borne out by Andy Newmark when we had him on, in a way, I mean, good on you, Sly, for getting to 82.
Yes, because he I mean, he was Kana. He was a Kana, right? Famously a Kana. But what a talent. I mean, those records are so good. And we had that lovely ep when we had Andy Newmark on a few weeks ago, and he told that story how when he was playing in LA and he was doing a gig with who was he? Harley Simon at the Troubadour. And Sly Stone's sax player was in the room, and at the end mentioned to Andy that Sly was looking for a new drummer, right? So he said, well, come on then, let's go to his house. Where does he live? I'll go and find him and see if he wants me. So, they actually went to Sly Stone's house. And
he was on his own. Andy went on his own.
Andy went on his own, of course.
And he just had a name, and it was some kind of real New York, like Joey Two Times kind of name of some security guard, which the guy on the door recognized. And so it was like, well, okay, come on in. And this is Rockstar's house in Bel Air. But of course, Andy, remember, I mean, I think it was one of our trailers. Andy just had this fabulous thing. Said, it was the Wild West. Imagine just walking up to Taylor Swift's front door.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And well, I've imagined that a few times. To a bedroom, didn't he? And it's obviously full of this posse and
Sly's Sly's family and the entourage.
And somewhere in this room is a circular waterbed with Sly on it. And that poor little Andy, just said, I hear you want a drummer, and there was a drum kit in the corner, wasn't there?
Yeah. Again, I mean, this scene is amazing. It's like David Lynch, isn't it? Like...
There's a dwarf sitting on the drum kit.
Exactly. Stilts,
yeah. So he said, okay, play something funky. So of course Andy, who's the drummer in eventually was the drummer in on Young Americans, played something funky, and apparently then and Sly then jumps to his feet and starts dancing on this waterbed,
Yeah.
and he got the
Thank God
gig.
it didn't go through it.
But it kind of sums up that what he was like, I guess. A kind of Prince character, constantly writing, constantly playing, and then Andy played on the Fresh album.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you know what? I think that's a great comparison, by the way, Sly and Prince. I hadn't really that's a really, really good one. Like both absolutely unique. I mean, he invented a whole school of writing, didn't he? That didn't really exist. All those chords and stuff. He was like the kind of funk Burt Bacharach in a way.
yeah, well, another person who is like the Burt Bacharach, but was more coming out of the doo-wop school was Brian Wilson, who went
See,
and
see what we did there.
yeah. I mean, this is what do you know? I have to admit that I didn't grow up as a Beach Boys fan. In the 70s, growing up in London, being from glam rock. Did
But
you buy
Gary,
Beach Boys?
I did, but I bet you had the same thing I did, which is you hear the Beach Boys and you've seen the Beach Boys, the early, and it's be true to your school and Sloop John B and all that, but then you're being told about this other Beach Boys, about this super dark, deep band.
Didn't that
Do you know what I mean?
come
You're
later?
getting that, yeah, but you're hearing it from people like McCartney and Bowie, and people, they're all going, "Oh, Brian Wilson," and you're going, "But it's the Beach Boys."
Yeah,
But
and I
and you're right, and then I do remember because I'm sure it's the same for you. The first time you actually sat down, rather than just on the radio and listened to Good Vibrations, and then it's like, what the fuck?
I know, and you got to listen deep, haven't you? Because at the top is a bubblegum kind of tune and bubblegummy lyrics, but underneath is the most extraordinary amount of chords and key changes and sound changes and diverse instrumentation,
And
voice
theremin, and
theremin. I know, but I just want to go back to that because I don't think I was really tuned in, as a lot of people. There seems to be a sort of a reappraisal that went on later on. In the same way with ABBA, right? There was a reappraisal of them. I mean, I didn't buy ABBA records, but then
no, of course
suddenly
not. No,
we
you're
were told
absolutely
by
right.
people like Alexis Petridis that how wonderful and brilliant they are. All I remember is when I was a kid, Sloop John B, I played on a descant recorder in the orchestra group, in the recorder group at school. And we went with a bunch of other kids, other schools, to some sort of festival of recorders. And it was a kind of competition. And all I remember is we were on about like 3/4 of the way through the schools that were there and walking on to a stage full of drool. Because that's all that ever used to happen in recording groups, isn't it? Spit used to run out of the bottom. So it was like being on the Sloop John B.
Oh,
It was
very
like being a
good.
C.
Did you ever fight with another school?
I would have run away.
But also no, because last thing I say is the whole thing talking about because Brian was from that amazing school of writing. I get that Burt Bacharach, Jimmy Webb, Carole King, also that word of wonderful chordy as opposed to rock and roll
Brill
bass chords.
building.
Brill building, exactly. Lots and lots, all those lovely chords, which Motown adapted. But I always found with his songs, there's something slightly off with some of them, something just that bit dark. There'll just be things like, what? Wow, there's this amazing key change. Yeah, but why?
Yeah, it sort of reflects his mental health, though, doesn't it? Which
I
we
think
began
very
to know about.
much. Whereas with Sid Barrett, he's kind of, there's all this crazy, you could see exactly what's going on and you could kind of imagine why it's going on.
Anyway, sadly, in a way, I'm kind of left feeling slightly bereft because I don't think I appreciated the Beach Boys as much as I do since he died. Because I think since he died, you go back and listen and think, oh my God, what have I missed?
Well, no, to be honest, went deep into it. There was a whole thing when he kind of, when he was sort of brought back from the dead. He was the sax player for Pink Floyd on the 1987 to 89 tours. He used to had a gig when Brian was deep in his state, being looked after by Eugene Landy, or rather abused by his psychologist, Eugene Landy. Scott had this gig. He'd go around to see him every few weeks and keep him briefed on new keyboards and synthesizers and whatever was happening. So he always had an eye out for what was going on.
Yeah, and I did see him play. I think I saw him at Hyde Park at one point, and it was extraordinary.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I can't remember if we followed him or he followed us. I think we followed him when I played Live 8 with Roxy Music in Berlin. You know, more importantly, when I didn't play with Pink Floyd at Live 8. Yeah, I was in Berlin and we were all stuck in this tent. There was just this one dressing room tent, and I was stuck there, hemmed in, right opposite Brian Wilson, and for hours. And I kept wanting to talk to him, but it was just sort of awkward, and then you're sort of trying not to stare at him, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wasn't.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about Mick Ralphs, especially with Joe Elliott, who's going to come on and talk to us from Def Leppard. He's like he's a massive fanboy, and he's also knew him and etc. But just generally wanted to say how we're sort of reaching that time where they're going to go, and I'm reminded of that moment a few years back where every time you'd watch November the 11th. And the old vets at the cenotaph, and gradually it got less and less until all you had was Harry Patch in a wheelchair.
That's right, yeah.
And then he was gone. And it does feel a bit like that, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it does feel, you know, because they're all reaching 80 or they're beyond 80, and everything that we grew up on, all those great teachers that we once knew, and that people that were in a way showing us another way to live, part of the counterculture, are all just going to, and we're just going to be left with influencers. I mean, no, that's not fair.
Yeah, that's not
great.
I know, no, but listen, it's like but in a way, that's I'm sure people were saying that when the Impressionists started dropping. You know, when the Jazz started dropping. That's what it's. The way to look at it is, wow, to have been in the same lifetime as this amazing generation of people.
Imagine being alive when Oscar Wilde was alive.
Yeah. So it's, you look at it like that. Because by the way, I sent a message to David Gilmour to ask him if he wanted to say anything. But I know he's put out a statement. And it's very interesting the way David talks about Mick, because he could almost be talking about himself as a guitarist.
Right.
About how he sings through his guitar and can say the same with 3 notes as most people can with 100. You can see that's exactly why they were drawn to each other, because they were great. Because I'd like to say I met Mick Ralphs on stage at the Birmingham Odeon in the same building and on the same day as I met David Gilmour.
Oh, wow.
And he was so nice, because I was in this band Dream Academy and we'd been asked to support David at the last minute, because he was being supported by Alternative TV, who the last night had suddenly sung a song called I Know Where Sid Barrett Lives. And David, right, off you fuck.
Oh, God. But this is on the About Face record, is it?
Yes, this is 1984, yeah. And they were great. And he was, what a lovely man, lovely, funny man, and great writer. We'll get into his writing and stuff in a second. But I just want to quickly say one thing, that Mick, he was so funny. He's the guy who coined the nickname, the legendary chairman of Atlantic Records, Ahmet Ertegun. Mick Ralphs used to call him Ert's arm again. He also once told me a story so funny that when I wrote my book, I thought, you know what, I'm not putting any other people's stories in the book. You can't. It's just too much of a can of worms. And I was so sad. I thought, but Mick's never going to write a book. And I just thought, you know what? It's exactly the sort of thing that could have happened to me. So I said it happened to me. And I put it in the book. And within 3 weeks of my book coming out, all 3 principal members of Pink Floyd had said to me, I remember that.
Shows you how myth and legend is created.
Exactly.
So go on, what was it?
Okay, so we're on tour, or he was on tour. I used to tell it in my show, so I'm so used to telling it as me. But the story is basically, you're in a hotel. When you're doing those big tours, you get your wake-up call, then your luggage call, then lobby call, right? It's usually 9, 10, 11. That's the privilege of heritage rock acts. So the idea is, usually, you get your wake-up call, you're just getting into bed. Then the guy calls for your luggage, you frantically pack then, and then you rush down to the lobby. And the story, Mick, he'd been up all night for some reason or other. And so he thought, fuck, I'm not going to get sleep. Do you know what? I'm going to pack. They're not going to get me this time. I'm going to be ready. I'm totally packed. Because what happens is they come and just take your luggage and then you don't see it till your next hotel room, right?
Yeah.
So
It's gone.
he's up all night and he just packs and unpacks and repacks because he's feeling quite refreshed. And, you know, and he just keeps repacking. And then eventually, right, that's it. I'm ready to go. Wake up call comes. Yep, it's all good. I've got a whole hour just basically staring at his case, or cases, as it probably is. Then luggage call, Mr. Ralphs. Yeah, there you go. Take my bags. But they take the bags. That's it. They're gone. Fantastic. They didn't get out, you know. I've got a whole, as a quick nap. God, thank God. Right, I've now got a whole half hour to just shower and get dressed.
But
the luggage, he's really packed. He's packed so well. The luggage is halfway to Milwaukee. There's nothing for it but to go down to the lobby shop in your dressing gown and get, I don't know, a pair of Hilton own brand Docksiders and some Speedos.
Oh, yes, good story to steal. But I can imagine you doing that. You should.
Exactly. I mean, maybe it did even.
Yeah, except in your case, there'd be hat boxes as well. Anyway, I think Joe Elliott is going to join us now. So, and obviously going to talk a bit about Mick Ralphs.
Yes.
And should we get him on?
Welcome to the Rockonteurs.
Where are you, Joe?
I'm in Birmingham.
Alabama?
No, Birmingham. Yes.
In Alabama.
Yeah, I'm in Birmingham, Alabama.
So how many hours are you? Wow.
I'm in Birmingham, Alabama.
What are you, 6 hours behind there then?
I don't know, but it was me that got the hours wrong. Yeah, maybe. It doesn't matter. I'm kind of awake anyway, sort of.
Joe, thank you so much for doing this. This is
no worries, bud. We just did a
then.
gig here last night. It was 94 degrees on stage.
Oof.
Oh my God.
You know that, Gary.
You're using American numbers, mate. American numbers.
You know when you were a kid and you go to the public swimming baths and the lifeguard guy would look at your finger ends, and if they were all wrinkly, they'd kick you out the pool. That's what happened last night. It was so humid that all the guys' I only play acoustic on 2 songs, and my fingers wouldn't move because they'd wrinkled up with so much humidity. I had to lift them off to move to the next fret rather than flying.
Was Phil getting on?
Yeah, they struggled a bit, you know, but we giggled through it and sweated, and it wasn't a gig; it was an assault course. But we know we
Who
got
are you on tour with. Is it just you, or is it?
It's a various different people. We've got the Struts opening for us in a couple of days for a few shows. We've got Collective Soul, Joan Jett.
Oh wow.
There's
We'd love Joan on this show. You're gonna have to try and persuade.
Oh yeah, yes, for sure.
Yeah, I'd certainly do my best. You know, she's a good girl. So yeah. So we got various different people on. It's quite a mild summer. We've got 2 days off now, and then we've got a gig in Atlantic City on Saturday night, and then I got 6 nights in the same hotel in Boston because we're satelliting out of there and stuff. So
Lovely.
It's relatively civilized for a gentleman of my distinguished age.
Are you coming to the UK?
Yes, funnily enough, but only the one gig. We're doing Chelmsford on the 7th of September. BBC in the Park.
Cheltenham.
Oh, is it? I wandered round for hours.
Yeah.
It's Essex Ladies College.
Yeah, it's a BBC in the Park gig. So it's like on radio and telly or on iPad and stuff, you know. It's like a kind of a one-off special thing.
Well,
so
he's in Ibiza right now, right, on holiday. So we weren't going to do an episode this week, but because of everything that's happened, we thought we should. And we've been chatting about Sly Stone's passing. Told that great Andy Newmark story of when he did his audition with Sly, and of course Brian Wilson as well.
Yeah. My radio show has become an obituary show. You know, I do this radio show for Planet Rock every Saturday. And 2 weeks ago, I ended with Good Vibrations and then I Want to Take You Higher, which don't normally get played on Planet Rock. But, you know, I am who I am and they allow me to play anything. And I went, I'm not letting this go. You know, this has got to be done because I don't believe in pigeonholing. And I also think that credit where credit is due has to be done, you know, and somehow for that first 48 hours after somebody passes, you hear their work in a totally different light,
I was just saying the same thing. I was just saying, because I don't think I was a Beach Boys man. I certainly wasn't when I was growing up, and it's a sort of a taste that I've learned to acquire. But then when he goes, or when they go, you suddenly realize that it's definitive.
Yeah, I must send you this link that somebody sent me of Sir George Martin. It's with Brian Wilson sat at the desk with the sliders messing around with the God Only Knows mix.
Wow.
It's just mental. It's like, it's just, it brings chills to your spine almost, just hearing how he was so focused on getting the balances right and stuff like that. It's like unheard of when Spector gets all the credit or he gets all the spotlight because waving a gun around, but in comparison, I know that Spector's footprint on rock and roll is massive, but quietly Brian Wilson's was so much more sophisticated, and
because it was happening in conjunction. It was that thing that was happening at the same, like a sort of morphic resonance between him and the Beatles, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's a bigger rivalry there than was between the Beatles and the Stones.
I mean, would there have been Sgt. Pepper without Pet Sounds? That's all. That's the
absolutely not. And there was never not going to be a Sgt. Pepper because of His Satanic Majesty's request or whatever. You know what I mean? So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I was saying to Guy earlier as well, though, we're in quite a lot of these people that we've grown up with that really have changed our world and given us this life. Have a going, and it reminded me of that sort of cenotaph moment when there was only Harry Patch in a wheelchair as the last World War I vet.
In fairness, we've had a bit of a reprieve because if you remember back to 2016.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, you remember this, I think there's a book called 27, right? When they all, it was
but it was the 69 Club.
Yeah. It was a 69 Club in 16. There was Buffin, there was Bowie. 3 days before, there was
every week. Every week.
I think it started with on the 28th of December, and then come January, they just went down like Skittles, yes. And it obviously there's been a lot since, but it wasn't at the same rate. And now we're just going through one of those, break a matchstick because we need it, there's two gone. We need to break a matchstick now so the third one doesn't happen, sort of thing. But it just did, didn't it, with Ralpha? Oh,
so say closer to home. So,
I mean, for me, he's the one that I felt most tearful about, in a way, because. And for his work with Mott the Hoople, because I suppose how important All the Young Dudes was to me as an anthem growing up as a kid, as a moment when I felt like, music really is soundtracking my life, and because the lyrics being so English, the reference points of Top of the Pops or T-Rex. But it really was, the minute you get sucked into that record is the intro, because it's as has been described as the chimes of freedom, and it's got all that yearning emotionally, but it's got that real edge to it. And of course, that was Mick.
That's a beautiful way to put it, Gary. The chimes of freedom.
Yeah, who said that, by the way, Gary? Because he said that a lot. I know, but I'd love to think that he said it. No,
because Gary, I know I've heard it somewhere, I'm sure.
And it is perfect. But
well, here's the thing. I discovered Mott the Hoople on Island compilation albums. Nice Enough to Eat, Bumpers, and LP. Right. So my first introduction to Mott the Hoople was Mick Ralphs singing, actually, Thunderbuck Ram off Brain Capers. And then it was Ian singing the original Mixed Up Kid. And I don't know what it was. There was something. I was only 10, 11 years old. I was 10, yeah. And then a couple of years later, and I'm telling everybody in my schoolyard, listen to this band, Mott the Mott the what? And, it's like, and then all of a sudden, Dudes hits the radio. And I was just the one skipping around the schoolyard going, told you so, told you so. And here's the thing that intrigues me about that song. Yes, you're right. I mean, in fairness, Bowie's lyric, he's written it in a very Lou Reed fashion, name dropping, basically. It's all Wendy's and
you're right.
Billy's. Yeah. And it is a very English lyric. But here's the thing. Mick Ralphs, obviously, as we discovered, as we got to know him later on, when he left Mott and became a member of Bad Company, was much more of a blues-based guitarist. But that guitar lick, which is Mick Ralphs, it wasn't Bowie. Bowie gave them the song. Mick came up with the intro.
Okay, because that could have been Ronno. That could have been.
It's a very classical melody. in his respect that he could have been Haydn or, you know, Mozart, you know. And for Ralph to come up with something like that, he must have been on a real creative peak to step out of what was his comfort zone, because he was a little bit like a poor man's Peter Green on a lot of that early Mott the Hoople stuff. You know, there's shades of Oh Well in some of his licks and stuff like that.
Sound was that was sound was totally formed from the first album, wasn't it? Back in '70, he was totally, he came out of the box with that, and I was, you know, the definitive meat and two veg, a Les Paul.
Oh, the first song they ever recorded was a Ralph song called Rock and Roll Queen, which is just riff. It's almost ahead of its time. The Down and Outs covered this song and it made it sound like it'd always been written. It didn't sound like we were recording an old tune. It was just like a proper guitar riff that kind of really didn't resonate at the time in a big way. But, you know, that song, just taking all the young dudes, which Guy was just talking about there, as a starting point of this conversation, this is the depth and the ability that Mick Ralphs had as a guitar player. He wasn't Flash, he wasn't Jimmy Page, he wasn't Eddie Van Halen, or he didn't want to be. It was not in his makeup. But what he did, he started that song off with something that hooked you in. You know, you've got something big on the hook when you hear that beginning bit. But then he basically drops out. You know, the only time you really hear the guitar on Dudes after that is when there's a crashing chord at the end of the first verse. There's just a when you're 25, and that's all you get. And then it's more driven by acoustic, which is Verden Allen. But then he comes in and it's one note Bach style rundowns on the chorus. Which, because it's the song that is showing off, not the guitarist.
It's a bit frustrating on the album version, because on the single version, of course, you have silence and then suddenly that wonderful sound comes in. On the album version, there's a track butted right up to it that is too loud, and it never sounds quite as good when Dudes come.
Accidental airplay, that's what that was called. That's what they were all going for. We stole that idea so many times. You know, like put the songs up so if it plays up, the DJs will have to keep the needle on. But I mean, it's still to this day, it's a timeless production because it doesn't have any specific toys that go out of date involved in it. It's just a real proper production. It sounds like it could have been Ken Scott.
We covered it. Spandau did it once in live on a gig in Spain back in the 80s, and that intro being so good, we just said, look, this is too good to do it once, and we just doubled it because it never comes back again, does it?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I know a bunch of people have done that, actually. In fairness, I think Ian Hunter, when he was out on tour early 80s with Todd Rundgren, Rundgren played that. I mean, I've heard that lick played by Rick Derringer, Todd Rundgren, Mick Ronson, Mick Ralphs, Phil Collin, you know, and I know a bunch of people actually go around twice because it's like, I like this, you know, they self-indulge because it's so good, you know.
I think it was, sorry, Guy, go. I think it was the last song Mick Ronson played on stage at Freddie's?
Yeah, he did do it. Yeah, I don't know if it's the last one they did. They did Dudes, they did Heroes.
Oh, maybe that.
That was interesting to hear Ronson play.
Rono did he play on Heroes then? Sorry, we're talking about another.
He played the Robert Fripp lick. The Robert Fripp lick, which was always a Ronson lick anyway. Ronson finally got to play it. You know, it was like a kind of a time warp TARDIS moment. You know. Yes, bless him.
Because I went to
lovely guy, man. Lovely.
I said, Joe, because did you know his nickname for Ahmet Ertegun of Atlantic Records?
I can't say that I do. No.
Hurt his arm again.
Hurt his arm. Yeah. Well, they were all about that, Mott. They had black belt in spoonerisms. They lived by them. There's a song on a Mott album, which is the Mott that Ian wasn't in. It was Benjamin and Ray Major. They did 2 albums. There's a song called Broadside Outcasts, which is a very clever spoonerism.
Very good. Very good.
You know,
what about the missing guitar? We did an episode on missing guitars, Joe, a few weeks ago, and of course there is the famous "All the Way from Memphis," which I think actually Mick played on.
Yeah,
which was meant to be about this 6-string razor that goes missing in Memphis, but there was some truth in it, wasn't there?
Yeah, absolutely there was. Yeah, they used to frequent the pawn shops, and I mean PAWN shops in places like that.
That's 3 ball porn.
Yes, that's the one. And in fact, many years ago, I
Sounds
bought.
wrong.
I know. Many years ago, I got Pete Watts's Fender Strat in an auction, and it's 0052.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's one that he picked up for like 200 quid in a pawn shop. I must add that I certainly didn't get it for 200 quid. But I had to have it. I got Vernon Allen's organ from that he played on All the Young Dudes. I got that, and I've got Watts's Strat. You know, I was trying to get hold of Trevor Boulder's bass, his B3, but his daughter was reluctant to sell at the time.
EB3, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, that's the one.
But
Better than me. Yeah, it's just
there
got 4 strings on it, guys. It's just got 4 strings on it.
But Mick's guitar did get stolen, didn't it, on Long
Yes,
Island?
it did. Yeah, it got sold. They had loads of gear nicked all the time. People would just walk on stage, and roadies would just think that they were part of the local crew. It's very difficult sometimes, unless they're wearing their laminates, to really. If somebody's brave enough, they can just walk in to grab one and walk off.
But the laminates weren't really a thing.
They weren't. You know, sticky patches back in those days. You know, but yeah, there's a lot of Ian's lyrics, apart from Honolulu Boogie, which he readily admits there's no such word. Most of his lyrics are autobiographical. So you know, yeah, absolutely, it went missing, and he gave them a story, and he gave them a fantastic song. You know.
Yeah. What about
And
Bad
the
Company?
great guitar work by Ralph in All the Way from Memphis on the album version.
Because he left after that, didn't he?
He's very understated. Yeah, he was on the first 4. He was on Mott, the Hoople. He was on Mad Shadows, then on All the Young Dudes and Mott. So he did the
Mott,
4 albums, 2 with CBS. And then that's when it all started to unravel a little bit. He was getting a little, I don't think he liked fame as, well, he actually did. He didn't like the fame he was getting with Mott. He didn't like the platform boots and the, oh dear, oh God, oh my, kind of part of it. And he was getting a little disillusioned with Ian of his what he considered to be his vocal limitations, which to me are not at all, but I can understand somebody else disagreeing with me.
A blues man.
Yeah, and you know, they tried Can't Get Enough as a Mott song. If you listen to the first Bad Company album, there's 2 songs, one called Ready for Love, which Mott had already recorded on the All the Young Dudes album, and a song called Moving On, which did eventually come out on a Mott box set, but they'd recorded it sometime around about the Brain Capers period, and with Mick singing it, but they never used it. And he gave that to Paul Rodgers to sing as well. So he wanted to work with a much more of a bluesy singer, and consequently Mott and Free, being stablemates at Islands, had worked together. And when Free had temporarily split, a band called Peace, which Paul Rodgers put together, opened for Mott the Hoople. So I think what you got is backstage in the corridor, you had Ralph and Paul Rodgers buddying up and, you know, making little conspiracies and, you know, hey man, we're great to get back together one day. And lo and behold.
Because do we not think that like Bad Company, I mean, especially about Straight Shooter, that album, it's such a perfect thing. It's like if you ask the computer, the definitive British blues rock band of the early 70s. I mean, with perfect hooks, it's perfect.
It's a great record. The first album showed what they were capable of, and also not just musically, but Paul Rodgers banging down the door of Peter Grant and saying, manage us, you know, because...
Yeah, because they did the first album at Henley Grange, didn't they? Where
they're the first Swan Song act, weren't they?
Well, what happened was Zeppelin had time booked in Headley Grange, and you know, being the band that they were, the behemoth that Zeppelin was, I don't know, decided to go to the pub, or they needed a couple more weeks, but the studio at the time was booked. So Peter Grant shoved Bad Company in on that 2 weeks, and they got the first album done. Now, here's a story for you. It's quite well known-ish in Bad Company circles, but on Can't Get Enough, they were recording outside they had the mobile in the garden, and it was a beautiful sunny day, and the door was wide open. And when it gets to the guitar solo in the middle, there's this down, down, and if you listen to it, it kind of overbends in a couple of spots. A dog jumped on Ralph's back while he was playing it, right? And he kept on going, and he's got a dog on his back. So he overfielded a bit, which he'd be used to doing because he often played guitar solos laying on the floor being kicked by Guy Stevens. You know, so Ralph
used really strange tuning on that song as well, just out of it. It's virtually every string is C. It's like,
is it really? Yeah, I wasn't aware.
C, G,
Oh wow.
CEC or
Okay.
something like that, you know, which gives it
Yeah.
that really kind of, you know, sound that he.
But, you know, for me as a kid growing up, it just depends what year you get caught. But you know, obviously, I heard things like "Can't Get Enough" on the radio. I heard "Good Loving Gone Bad" on the radio. Feels Like Making Love on the radio. But the album that caught my attention was coming out of Osborne's factory when I was 16 years old, past this little shop that sold bric-a-brac, and they had a copy of "Run with the Pack" in the window. It wasn't even a record shop, and it was 50p. So I'm like, I'll have that. And there's a song on that album called "Sweet Little Sister" that Mick Ralphs wrote. And you should give it a listen. It's just a full-on typical British blues pop rock. You know, I mean, it's not really bluesy, but it is to a point. But it's uplifting. It's not minor chord. It's not Wishbone Ashy where it sounds a bit musical. It's kind of it's a bit more raw. But the guitar solo that he plays, I think, Gary, you'd really admire it because it's not flash, but it's got little essences of melody. It's like lifting the lid off a perfume jar and going, "Oh, that's nice." It's just tasty. It's really, really tasty.
Oh, so another one like that.
I really got into, as an album, the third one and backwards to the other two.
Because talking about that tasty little unusual thing on "Feel Like Making Love," for instance, that clean solo in the verse, which sounds like it's two guitars.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that's an over.
With a dog, one without a dog.
Yeah, one without a dog. The dog one just gets like, why didn't you do it? It's fine, you know. It's like, doesn't matter. And
Because
then
I think
the odd thing is that, you know, because of the weight of Peter Grant, obviously, maybe
sorry.
I didn't mean that, but there's something about the Peter Grant thing and Atlantic Records and Swan Song all being attachment. In America at least, Bad Company became so much bigger than Free ever were. Yeah. You know, I mean, there's always going to be an argument within English rock fans as to chicken and the egg thing, you know, which was the better band, because Paul Rodgers has been blessed. I mean, he really has. He had Andy Fraser on bass and he had Paul Kossoff on guitar. And he's always had the constant of Simon Kirke, who's the best drummer in the world. I mean, bass drum, snare, one tom, a floor tom, two cymbals and a hi-hat. I mean, Neil Peart, are you watching? And then he goes from that to Boz Burrell and Mick Ralphs. He really was blessed to have a fantastic team to enhance his songwriting capabilities.
Well, coming out of King Crimson, wasn't he? So
yes, he was, you know. And again, a similar type of player, I suppose, to Andy Fraser. I'm not sure Fraser was ever fretless, but
he was a jazzer.
Yeah, you got the impression that he was fretless because he was.
It was fretless, but fretless wasn't the thing. What's amazing, to just get a little thing, is the bass he played was an Ampeg. This is the thing that salsa players used to play back in the 50s. It wasn't a Jaco Pastorius, you know, fretless. It was a dum ba dum bam bum bam bum fretless. You know what I mean?
But it worked.
Had a massive, great double bass headstock on it. Fabulous thing.
But those songs, those albums, and it doesn't matter if it's Free or whether it's. I mean, we all, you know, as kids go, this Kossoff guy's got this really weird sound and strange vibrato, and it's a bit messy, but I like it, sort of thing. And with Mick Ralphs, you had a much more of an understated guitar player. But they were there to enhance the singer. That's what it was all about. You know, a lot of rock bands kind of forget everything goes in A, and the poor singer guy has to scream his balls off over the top because it's not in G anymore like it was for the Stones or the Kinks. And so Judas Priest are born. You know, what Paul Rodgers was is like he'd play it on a piano on an acoustic, and Mick would work it out and make it work so that it was. The singer's always the front ship. He's always the guy leading the pack, you know, and you can't make him look like an idiot. So consequently, it really helps if he's slightly in charge of his register.
I think I've always had a theory about that, though, that as music got louder in that guitar area, the only place sonically that there was left was high up, was a Robert
That's very true. That's what Mott said to me. He says, I can mix you back in if you sing higher. You don't have to put it up front. So I bury you in the mix so that the guitar. Plus the fact that, I mean, and I don't blame any kid picking up a guitar. An A chord is a lot easier to play than a G chord. You know, it's one finger. You know what I mean?
But I think what we're agreed on, though, with Bad Company is it's no fat.
No, no
for
fat.
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
They didn't have any fat. Even on the albums where I kind of lost them for a little while, which is like Burning Sky, I didn't really gel with that record. And it could have just been down to the fact that the Pistols and the Clash were, you know, kind of taking up all
no, exactly.
AC/DC.
my space, if you like. And I kind of liked the one after that. They did one, the album that had Rock and Roll Fantasy on it. There was some really nice songs on that. But the first three Bad Co albums, there's definitely, even if there's a long song like the song Bad Company or the title track of the third one, Run with the Pack, which might be 6-7 minutes long, it doesn't have a lot of fat. It just has a little bit of room for some nice string arrangement, which is what happens at the end. Ron Nevison or his crowd did a really good string job on that particular song. But most of Bad Company songs, 3.5 minutes, you know, they're not much. You know, I think
you meet him, Joe?
Longer, you know.
You met him, Joe, didn't you?
Ooh.
You got to know Mick.
Yes, I did. I didn't get to know him very well. I got to know him well enough. I saw him every night on the Mott tours of 2013.
I remember seeing you on stage with him. Yeah.
I did every gig except the 2 warm-ups in Wales. But I got to hang out with him, and he was always like, Joe, come on in, you know. He remembered me from, and this is my favorite Ralphs story. He remembered me from way back. Back in 1984, you know, we just got back from the Pyromania Tour of America, where we were the biggest band in the world for a little while, to being nobody in the UK. But I just bought this house in Surrey, and I was kind of decorating the staircase with mad pictures. And Ross Halfin said, I'll Mick Ralphs or something. And I said, get me his autograph, right? So about a week later, Ross comes over and there's this piece of paper, and he says, to Joe, love Mick Ralphs, brackets, thanks for remembering who I am.
Wow.
Because he actually generally thought nobody knew anymore, because, you know, 84 Bad Co were not Bad Co anymore. And does anybody care
He was
about
talking with David.
Yeah, Gilmore. That's right. He was, yeah. And then he worked with George Harrison as well, in the studio, I think. I saw them in... You know, that sums him up for me. He's like, thanks for remembering who I am. He wasn't like, you know,
because he never threw flash shapes in a way, did he, on stage either?
No,
I was legs akimbo. He was legs akimbo.
I saw them in 2009. That when they is it 2009 when they got back together again, and at the Hammersmith Odeon they did those shows, and it's just, I can't believe 3 of them have gone since then.
I know, and here he was just wandering around the stage in his Hawaiian shirt. You know, it wasn't. You know, I mean, we're all entitled to grow up and move on. But, you know, when you see old videos of Mott, there are some stuff on the bits of stuff on YouTube from like French TV from the early days, like first 2 or 3 albums, doing like Walking with a Mountain and stuff like that. When he kind of throws the odd Townsend windmill, but generally speaking, once he went past 25, I think he just thought it's a bit, you know, well, that's for kids, you know, not for grown-ups.
Did he, you know, because they were going to be on that Run with the Pack tour, weren't they going to be supported by Paul Kossoff and Streetwalker? What were they called? Backstreet Crawler.
Backstreet Crawler, yeah.
Weren't they going to be supported by it? Did that ever happen? Any of that?
I have no idea. You've lost me there. I don't,
because this is what I'd heard, that you know that was going to happen, and then at that there was going to be a big tour, not really a double header, but Backstreet Crawler. You know, you imagine with Paul Kossoff, then followed by Mick Ralphs, but Paul died, and the tour got cancelled. But I'd wondered if there was.
No, I never knew anything about that, but I never really knew if Mick and Kossoff were close. But I would imagine they possibly could have been, had Kossoff been sober enough to, you know, keep a conversation going. But you know, Mick, in truth, it just doesn't happen anymore, guys. It just doesn't. You know, he wasn't really a musician. He was a human being that played a guitar. That's what he was. He was more concerned about getting on with somebody than being this flash guitar player. He just happened to be a guitarist and not a groundskeeper. You know, I mean, he was just a lovely, lovely man. He could sit and talk to you for hours. And if a bit like me, you get too excited being around the likes of Mick Ralphs and you've had a couple of Ian Hunter's champagne bottles, and I'm like, la, 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 la. He would just sit there when he never went, oh, shut the fuck up and get out. You know, he was really, and he was just a lovely guy. He would sit and listen. He would tell a story, or he'd come up to me and he'd say, like, did you hear about the man from, you know, and he'd tell you this really stupid joke. You know, he was just a lovely, lovely guy. You
He
know?
went into a care home, didn't he? Because he had a big stroke quite a
did.
few years ago. Guy, you know someone who went to visit, used to visit him.
Well, Sid, yeah, we had Sid Price, who was my tech for years, the father of Tom Price, who McCartney famously calls Half Price. And he was mixed tech. He was mixed tech as well, and they were really good friends. I remember Mick being at Sid's wedding, stuff, and yeah, he was going to see him every week.
That's nice. I've got
and there was a funny little joke, something that he used to say. I probably can't share it on.
Yeah, they played the Three Arena in Dublin. It was like their second last gig because I think the last one was Wembley. And obviously I went back and said hi and stuff. And I've got photos of all backstage and hanging out. Mick was on fire that night. I remember thinking, because he did kind of take a bit of a step back. He let Howard Leese play most of the solos, and Mick would just play rhythm. But he seemed to be really enjoying himself on this gig. And when I look back at it now, it's dead easy to think, I wonder if he knew something was going on, because I'd seen him live with Mott, and he was a different persona to the one in Bad Company. Maybe he just enjoys Bad Company more, but there was a joy in his body language on stage that I didn't really notice, you know, on the Mott stuff. And he was fine backstage. He was in great form. There's nothing, didn't look ill or anything like that. But then I think it was 3 weeks after the Wembley gig is when he had the stroke, and he'd been in a nursing home since. And I remember Paul Rodgers sending me some photographs of him at the side of Mick's bed, and they were having a little jam. I think Mick was like on a ukulele, and Rodgers had the acoustic, and they were just mugging the camera. And I know that Paul did make a lot of effort to stay in touch and go visit him whenever. Paul lives in Canada. It's not just getting on the number 41 bus, you know. And Ian as well, Ian Hunter. You heard about anything from Ralph? And he goes, yeah, I spoke to him 3 weeks ago. You know, he's doing okay, and that's all I'd get. So basically, it was like it was as good as it was going to get. It's been a 9-year deterioration to his passing.
Ian Hunter is still making, you know,
sad,
Ian's still rocking, isn't he? The oldest of them all.
Yeah, he's just had his 86th birthday. He's coming to see us in Mohegan Sun in 4 days' time.
Amazing.
And then he's writing new material. He's writing another album, Defiance Part 3.
Defiance Part 7.
Yeah, he's still at it, you know. So, I mean, there's 2 of them left. There's Ian and there's Verdon Allen, and the rest they're gone. Yeah. It's really sad for me, because these guys have been all part of my DNA, life, whatever, since I was 10. I'm 65. So you're looking 55 years of constantly being there if I want to play one of their songs. I mean, we were in the dressing room the other day, after the day that we found that Mick died, and I just plugged my phone through the speaker, and we listened to I'm a Cadillac off the Mott album, because Ralph sings it, plays it. It's just his piece, you know. And Phil was just sat there and he goes, this is just lovely. And then Vivian, who wasn't familiar with it, goes, is that Ralph's? And he goes, he's really good, isn't he? You know what I mean? So it was just a nice moment. It finished, and lo and behold, we put it on again. We just literally had a full Mick Ralphs session before soundcheck.
You did a tribute, didn't you, that night?
I did, yeah. On stage that night, I did about a minute's worth of a song called Seagull, which is the last track off the first album. Just because it's conveniently simple enough to do with just before we do the acoustic section, you know. We weren't going to be able to sit down and work out Can't Get Enough. It would have taken too long.
Good luck with the tour, Joe, and thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Joe.
I appreciate let me my little saying, God bless Mick Ralphs and his family. Absolutely. And all his fans and friends, because he really has been an inspiration to a lot of people. He doesn't lift his head above water very often, didn't he? Just got on with it like a real man, and supplied the backbone to a lot of fantastic songs over his life. So God bless Mick Ralphs.
Yeah. Thank you, mate. All the best.
You're welcome.
Catch up soon.
Talk to you soon. I'll send you that Brian Wilson link. It's
Oh yeah.
amazing. All right, guys.
Bye,
Talk to you
Joe.
later.
Cheers,
Be good.
Joe.
Bye.
Thank you.
He's proper, isn't he, Guy? He's a great.
He's
rock
great. He's
hunter.
amazing. He's a great, just a great. There was a thing where you asked him something, and he said, "I don't know about that," and I was shocked.
Yeah.
What a fucking historian and curator. I'd love him to. He should organise some exhibition or something.
I know.
That brain needs to be put to
I
use.
know. Well, I told you I went to his house, and he's got every ticket stub
I know,
for every
yeah.
concert he's ever been to in the 70s, and yeah, I mean, he's amazing. You enjoy the rest of your holiday, Guy.
Thank you.
And I think we're back for a final one next week, aren't we?
Next week, and then
Before
you're
the
off on
break.
your holidays, aren't
And
you?
I'm off on my holidays. I've got my school kids all holiday, which is the most expensive holiday you can get, obviously, because it's the middle of the summer. And I think we're going to be back in September.
We are, but we've already got some goodies lined up.
Yeah. All right. So thanks everyone for listening. Thanks to Ben Jones from Gimme Sugar for producing, and it's good night from me.
And it's good night from them.